Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise, pull out the insights you actually need. And global transportation just had one heck of a week. Really, a major shakeup. It was this period where, geopolitics, policy, corporate strategy, even tech, they all just slammed together. It's creating ripples, I think, that are going to reshape supply chains for months, maybe even years. So today we're taking a deep dive into the Global Transportation Weekly Analysis. This covers June 30th to July 6th, 2025. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission is pretty clear. Dig out the most important nuggets, maybe some surprising facts, and really help you connect the dots. You'll see how this whole sector is grappling with new security threats, sharp policy turns, some painful economic restructuring, and this kind of widening gap between the crises we see right now and the promises for the future.
It's true. These aren't just, random headlines popping up. They're interconnected. Each one influences the others. So our goal is really to help you see those threads, understand the broader implications, and connect what might seem like totally separate events.
Okay, let's jump right in then. A dramatic story shattered a fragile calm in the Red Sea. Sunday, July 6th. The Liberian-flagged, Greek-owned bulk carrier Magic Seas. It came under a really sophisticated, multi-pronged attack. This happened about 51 nautical miles southwest of Yemen's Hodeida port. And the nature of the attack was particularly concerning. We're talking small arms, RPG fire from multiple boats, and critically, strikes from those unmanned surface vehicles. Drone boats, USVs. The security firm, Embry, they reported maybe up to 8 skiffs and 4 USVs. 2 of those USVs actually hit the ship's port side, caused fire, water intake. The crew, 23 people, had to abandon ship. Thankfully, they were all rescued safely.
Yeah, and what's really striking, especially given the recent, relative quiet, is that this wasn't just any attack. It marks the first major Houthi assault on commercial shipping since that de facto ceasefire back in March. The Houthis, they quickly claimed credit, said it was in support of Palestinians. But the timing, coming right after the Trump administration announced a Gaza ceasefire, well, it suggests broader strategic aims. Maybe beyond just the immediate conflict.
That's a really interesting point on the timing and the aftermath. Wow, incredibly tense. The Israeli army issued an urgent warning for Yemeni port evacuations. Then shortly after, explosions were reported nearby. So clearly signaling potential retaliation. And we have to remember, right, Houthi forces hit over 100 vessels since November 2023. They sank 2, killed 4 people. That basically shut down the Red Sea route for most container lines. Disrupted, 12% of global trade? Huge.
Exactly. And this combined attack, small boats and USVs, it represents a dangerous evolution in their tactics. Makes defense much trickier, the immediate impact. This attack, it's almost certainly going to halt, probably reverse, that recent sharp drop in container freight rates, which ironically had fallen like 37% on trans-Pacific routes just before this happened.
Okay.
Yeah, so it forces this widespread return to longer, much more expensive trips around the Cape of Good Hope. And beyond just shipping costs, this directly challenges those international naval coalitions and the current U.S. administration's foreign policy. It really tests their response threshold. And, a weak response, or what's perceived as weak, could absolutely embolden other malign actors globally.
So, okay, what this really means for you, listening, is that a single drone boat attack, it sends ripples right through global supply chains. Could even reignite inflation concerns. Affects the cost of, everything. All right, let's shift gears. From those volatile global seas, let's bring back home to the U.S., because domestic policy shifts are creating their own kind of turbulence. We've seen a really significant policy pivot at the Department of Transportation, the U.S. DOT. This is under Secretary Sean P. Duffy and the administration's whole America First agenda. So the U.S. DOT rolled out what they're calling a pro-trucker package. Most notably, it included formally withdrawing that proposed speed limiter mandate for heavy-duty trucks, their reasoning. It lacked a sufficiently clear and compelling safety justification. They even argued it could create a hazard, trucks going too slow. Predictably, OID, the Independent Drivers Association, they praised that. The package also pushed forward over $275 million in grant funding for truck parking, which, it's a big issue.
Yeah, it is. But if you connect this to the bigger picture, you start seeing this inherent contradiction. While the administration is basically deregulating safety with the speed limiter withdrawal, they're simultaneously tightening the labor supply for truckers. It's a complex mix they're creating, potentially unstable.
Right. And that tightening of labor, immigration controls, it's very evident. FMCSA, the Safety Administration, they were told to launch a nationwide compliance audit, looking at states issuing these non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses, CDLs. And it's explicitly linked to a crackdown on undocumented immigrants. We've also seen stricter enforcement of English proficiency for commercial drivers. That's already sidelined, 40 Mexican truckers just last week?
Exactly. And the broader political agenda is definitely visible. We're also seeing these sweeping updates to NEPA, the Environmental Policy Act, designed to fast-track roads, bridges, and other key infrastructure. And the Senate just passed that $12.5 billion bill. Secretary Duffy called it one big, beautiful bill for ATC modernization, air traffic control. What really stands out, though, is the language. Very politicized. Secretary Duffy is effectively turning U.S. DOT into a front in a cultural conflict, not just regulation.
So it sounds like a mixed bag, really. Is there any way this policy helps the broader supply chain, or is it mostly a political play with these systemic costs you mentioned, like higher insurance premiums, maybe a tighter, more expensive labor market?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? It's clearly politically targeted. It aims to benefit independent drivers, a key group for them. But the trade-off is that potential systemic cost. Fleet owners, the broader supply chain, they might feel the pinch. It creates instability. And, instability rarely encourages the kind of long-term capital investment that transportation really needs.
Which raises a really important question for you, the listener. How does this kind of regulatory instability impact long-term investment? Does it affect infrastructure projects getting built? Future costs? Things to think about. Okay, let's shift again to the parcel sector. It's going through this major strategic rebalancing, moving decisively away from that growth at all costs mindset we saw during the pandemic peak. This week, all eyes are really on UPS, a truly historic decision. UTS unveiled Transformation 2.0. It's a plan for, get this, $3.5 billion in annual cost savings by 2025. Part of that. A planned reduction of 20,000 jobs from its frontline workforce. They're offering a voluntary buyout and early retirement package to full-time union U.S. drivers. That's a first. Historic. Described as generous. And on the physical side, they're shuttering 73 facilities, closing 164 total operations by the end of June. Eliminating redundancy, increasing automation.
Right. The strategy behind this, it's pretty clear. Post-pandemic reality means slower demand. And crucially, a deliberate glide down, as they call it, from their heavy dependence on Amazon. The plan is to cut Amazon volume by over 50% by the second half of 2026. Why? To free up capacity for more profitable customers, small and medium-sized businesses. They see that as a healthier long-term strategy. But predictably, this sets up an inevitable showdown with the Teamsters Union. General President Sean O'Brien, he's already condemned the buyout plan, called it an illegal violation of the 2023 contract. Remember, that contract committed UPS to create 22,500 new full-time union jobs.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So the Teamsters are urging members reject the buyouts. This is heading towards NLRB challenges, maybe even labor actions. It's going to be a fight.
And meanwhile, the competition isn't standing still. FedEx is doing its own restructuring, integrating Express and Ground. And interestingly, a new Inspector General report just showed the Postal Service saved like 43% on air transport costs by switching its main contract from FedEx to UPS.
So what we're really seeing is both giants, UPS and FedEx, systematically shedding their least profitable business. They're aggressively re-engineering for efficiency. That era of, universally free and fast shipping we all got used to, it's being repriced.
Repriced, okay.
Yeah. This will likely hit those low-cost e-commerce shippers hardest. Think Temu, Shein, and maybe rural consumers too, who often rely on those cheaper options. The UPS move, it's a calculated risk, a big one. Loss of experienced drivers if too many take the buyout. That's institutional knowledge walking out the door. And labor disruptions. That could cost them literally over $100 million a day.
Wow. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for you at home. What does this repricing of shipping actually mean for your online shopping? Your delivery expectations? Is that free shipping button going to become a rarity?
Yeah.
It's way to watch. Okay, moving to aviation. This week showed this incredible contrast, looking back at a crisis and at the same time looking forward to a really ambitious future. First, let's dissect the crisis anatomy. The tragic June 12 crash of Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, went down shortly after takeoff from Ahmedabad. 275 people killed. A grim milestone, really. The first catastrophic loss of a 787. India's Investigation Bureau, the AAIB, they're looking at everything, but the technical focus seemed to be narrowing. Potential simultaneous dual-engine failure. Evidence includes the ram air turbine, the RAT activating before impact, that's the emergency power unit, And simulations show the plane's configuration alone wouldn't cause this. The black box was recovered. It's being analyzed now.
And this crash, it didn't happen in a vacuum, right? There was prior regulatory scrutiny. Just back in March 2025, Air India and its subsidiaries faced warnings, failing to do mandatory component replacements on an Airbus engine, even allegations of submitting falsified documents, operating planes with overdue escape slide inspections, pilot duty hour breaches.
Seriously?
Yeah, it really suggests potential systemic safety culture issues within the airline. That's critical context for this tragedy.
That is deeply concerning. And crucially, this incident sparked what experts are calling an infodemic. There was this critical delay, a lack of transparent communication from the AAIB. It created an information vacuum. And that void, it was aggressively filled by AI-driven disinformation. We're talking a fake preliminary report.
Yeah.
Traced back to AI basically repurposing details from a 2024 LATAM incident. Deepfake videos, doctored images. It was bad.
Yeah, experts called it the most extensive case of misinformation in any accident investigation ever.
So what's the real takeaway here? Forget the old crisis comms playbook. It's obsolete. This incident basically screams that AI just rewrote the rules for disaster communication. We're all playing catch-up now. It's a stark warning about getting accurate info out when it truly matters most. Okay, now, for the complete flip side of the aviation coin, the UAE's race to urban air mobility. This week, we saw coordinated, successful test flights of eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, flying taxis, in Abu Dhabi with U.S.-based Archer Aviation, and in Dubai with Joby Aviation. Quite the contrast to the Air India story.
It truly is, and Abu Dhabi especially, they're pursuing this comprehensive ecosystem strategy. It's not just test flights. They're evaluating performance in their hot, dusty climate, establishing local MRO maintenance, repair, overhaul facilities, developing specialized pilot training, even building a local Archer aircraft manufacturing facility in Al Ain by 2027. They're going all in.
All in. And Dubai's on a similar path, right? Aiming for commercial launch first half of 2026, offering a premium air mobility service.
Exactly. And both Emirates, they're really emphasizing commercialization and accessibility. Officials are publicly aiming to make it affordable for the general public, pushing back against that idea that UAM is just for the super rich.
Interesting.
Yeah. The crucial insight here, I think, is that stark juxtaposition. One part of aviation struggles with conventional disaster, an infodemic even, while another is aggressively creating a whole new market from scratch. It's like two different aviation worlds coexisting, and it could lead to this competence gap, where some nations just leapfrog others in capability.
Fascinating. Okay, let's turn to North American rail. Speculation about a new wave of mega mergers is definitely resurgent, especially after that Canadian Pacific Kansas City, the CPKC merger last year. We're seeing what analysts are calling the specter of the U.S. rail mega merger. Financial analysts, they're now floating maybe a 20-25% chance of a new transcontinental merger being announced. That's a significant jump in likelihood. The focus seems to be on creating these east-west transcontinental carriers, Union Pacific, UP, and CSX. That's the most talked about scenario. And the move like that, it would almost certainly trigger a domino effect. BNSF and Norfolk Southern would likely follow suit. Yeah. Which collapses the current Big Six railroads down to a Big Four.
Right. And the rationale here pits efficiency against competition. It's the classic argument. Proponents, like UP's CEO Jim Vellana, they argue for efficiency. Eliminating bottlenecks at interchanges like Chicago, St. Louis. Improving service reliability. But the critics' unions, shippers, they fear it would, quote, destroy what little competition remains. They worry it'll intensify PSR, precision scheduled railroading, that controversial operating model focused on lean operations.
PSR.
Often leading to job cuts, service quality issues. That's the fear. And any potential merger faces this huge regulatory hurdle at the Surface Transportation Board, the STB. Right now, the board's deadlocked. 2-2 partisan split. They need a fifth member, presumably Republican, for any major decisions like this. Any merger has to clear a high bar on public interest competition, might require big concessions like open access for other rails on their tracks or full reciprocal switching.
Yeah.
And crucially, getting a blessing from the White House. That likely means getting the powerful rail unions on board, probably through job protections, benefits.
So if the STB is deadlocked 2-2, does that basically put these potential mega mergers on ice for now, until there's a fifth member?
For something this massive, yeah, a 2-2 split is essentially a roadblock at the STB. They can't really move forward on it. So yes, it adds another layer of uncertainty until that position is filled.
Okay. And this all connects to the broader freight market, which, by the way, is rapidly cooling.
Yeah.
Trans-Pacific container rates plummeted 37% in just 2 weeks leading up to July 6th.
Wow.
Yeah. And the National Retail Federation, NRF, they revised down their U.S. import forecasts big time. Like 20.5% to 27% declines projected from May through August.
That's significant. And the pervasive impact of tariffs, that's a primary driver here. The average tariff on U.S. container imports is now 21%. That's according to Maersk.
21%.
Yeah. And it's causing noticeable shifts. We're seeing cargo being front-loaded from Southeast Asia vessels that are 100% full. Meanwhile, utilization from China is falling. More blank sailings. And changes in U.S. port dominance, too. The Port of New York, New Jersey actually surpassed all other U.S. hubs in May, likely driven by those West Coast tariff impacts.
And amidst all this, there's a pretty strong regulatory counterstrike happening against the ocean carriers. The U.S. Federal Maritime Commission, the FMC, they've initiated a formal review of their agreement with the World Shipping Council, the WSC. WSC represents, 90% of the global container lines?
That's right.
And the FMC is investigating if their activities overstep the antitrust immunity they get under the U.S. Shipping Act. This follows OSRA 2022, the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, which gave the FMC more teeth, more power to police the industry.
Exactly. So if you connect this to the bigger picture, tariffs are now a primary driver of network disruption. They're accelerating supply chain regionalization, nearshoring, as companies try to mitigate risk. The FMC's review, it's like a pincer movement by the U.S. government, reasserting control over shipping. And this could potentially unravel the whole global vessel-sharing alliance system, could lead to intense market instability. It's a huge power play underway.
Which brings up another critical question for you. How will these massive shifts in rail, shipping, trade policy ultimately affect the prices you pay and the efficiency of getting goods? A lot to consider for your next Amazon click. Okay, finally, let's wrap with a look at two really contrasting approaches to sustainable transportation. One from the EU, one from California. The EU is making this grand infrastructure play, investing nearly $2.8 billion, that's about $3 billion US, through its Connecting Europe facility, CEF, for 94 transport projects. And an overwhelming 77% of that, over $2.1 billion, is going straight into rail. Big infrastructure upgrades. Rail Baltica, high-speed lines in Czechia, Poland, deploying ERTMS, the traffic management system.
And there's a really significant geopolitical angle here, too. A big chunk of that funding is strategically aimed at strengthening the EU-Ukraine solidarity lanes, improving rail connections, helping Ukraine adopt the standard EU railway gauge. It's a clear move to deepen economic integration, pull Ukraine closer.
Okay, now contrast that big top-down approach with California's very different localized planning strategy. Caltrans, the state DOT, awarded $26.5 million in sustainable transportation planning grants spread across 65 local projects.
Yeah, and the difference in purpose is really key. California's grants, they fund project planning and conceptual design, getting projects closer to shovel-ready. It's not funding the actual construction itself.
Yeah.
Right. They specifically support local, regional planning that aligns with goals like reducing greenhouse gases, improving safety for cyclists and pedestrians, strengthening climate resilience at the community level. Examples: a sustainable transport plan for the Bishop Paiute tribe, an evacuation route resilience plan for Inyo County. Very granular, community up. So what this really shows is a deep philosophical difference. The EU, top-down, infrastructure-led, believing large-scale low-carbon alternatives drive decarbonization. California, bottom-up, planning and policy-led, believing lasting change comes from empowering local communities to make their own choices.
It's really striking, isn't it? Two major economies tackling the same challenge, sustainable transport with fundamentally different philosophies, and seeing how geopolitics influences those green investments. Which approach do you think will be more effective in the long run? Interesting question. Now, this is where it really comes together, bringing it all back. This first week of July 2025, it's been clearly shaped by four powerful vectors of change.
Yeah, first, geopolitical friction. That Red Sea attack. It's a stark reminder. Choke point security isn't some rare black swan event. It's persistent. And non-state actors, they have evolving capabilities, those drone boats that can instantly upend global freight markets. Second, policy polarization. The America First DOT policies really highlight that contradictory nature. Deregulation here, protectionist labor controls there. It erodes long-term predictability for investment, doesn't it? Because policies can swing so wildly with election cycles. Third, economic rationalization. We're seeing the definitive end of growth at any cost in logistics. UPS, FedEx restructuring proves that. It's a clear shift to prioritizing profit, repricing last-mile delivery, and yeah, those big confrontations with organized labor. The free and fast shipping idea is being recalibrated. And fourth, technological divergence. Aviation is the perfect example. Pulled in two directions. backward by legacy safety crises, like Air India's AI-fueled misinformation mess, and forward by these ambitious, capital-heavy bets on urban air mobility, like the UAE is doing. It just highlights this growing global gap in capabilities and priorities.
So the overall outlook then for the second half of 2025, it's definitely one of sustained, probably increasing volatility. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Absolutely. And success in this kind of environment, it won't just be about operational excellence anymore. It's going to depend just as much on institutional agility, being able to navigate this increasingly unpredictable, complex political, economic, and technological landscape.
So, as you go about your week, maybe take a moment. Consider how these seemingly separate events, the drone boat attack, a truck parking grant, an airline crash and the fake news around it, a plane taxi test, how they're all actually deeply interconnected. They're fundamentally reshaping how goods move, how people travel, even how policy gets made, redefining risk, redefining opportunity in global transportation.